I never made but one prayer to God, a very short one. O Lord, make my enemies ridiculous. And God granted it. Voltaire.
So on their show, as you know, they sort of put out these clips, and I didn't know that she had been to the United Nations. And to my horror, I saw her testimony with some other woman whom I've never heard of, talking about
Zoe
how
Quinn, yeah.
what do you know which is the other woman? I don't know.
Zoe Quinn, I think it was, right?
Okay, yeah.
Unfortunately, yeah.
And so apparently the idea was that when they get criticized on Twitter, it's a form of cyberbullying. But I'm not talking here. Somebody saying, I'm going to cut you up. Just the fact that somebody makes fun of them, somebody criticizes them, belittles them, all of these things are forms of, verbal online violence against women that necessitates the United Nations to step in to help out. So this whole thing about genital mutilation and honor brides, honor killings and child bride takes kind of a back seat to the really important issue of
issues. In case you weren't aware, the important issues are: don't you say my baby isn't cute. You say I got an ugly baby. That's fucking like verbal abuse and shit. Like, that's what matters on
cyber violence.
That's such a if you put yourself out there in any way, and especially if you talk about issues that are, people have differing opinions, you can expect people to say something.
Yes.
You can make fun of the craziest shit. And like I mentioned earlier, you could say orgasms are good. And I can almost promise if that video stays up for a couple years, you'll get comments saying, well, I disagree. Orgasms are actually pretty bad. You can get people to disagree with anything. And the idea that is harassment or bullying and it just makes people look like they're playing the victim card so fucking hard. They don't know when to stop.
That we kind of have to step back and put things in context. What I don't like about Anita, I don't know her, I don't follow her, I don't know anything about her, but she seems like she's somebody who is afflicted with a version, and I mentioned this on Drunken Peasants, with Munchausen disorder. I don't know if any of you know it. So Munchausen syndrome is where you feign illness so that you could garner the intoxication of the sympathy, right? So you go to the hospital and people say, oh my God, you're such a victim. What happened to you? Let's all and this is what she's basically doing. She's repeatedly crying victim when there are people that I personally know. What do you think Sam Harris gets? Why isn't he walking around whining all day at the United Nations?
Yes.
So I don't respect that. I mean, I escaped execution in Lebanon, and I'm not whining and crying in front of the United Nations. So get a grip, Anita Sarkeesian. Maybe I'm being too unforgiving.
No, well said. I agree.
Yeah, I disagree with that.
My opinion.
I completely agree with you. With Anita, one of the biggest things for Anita is Anita absolutely silences every bit of dissent. She doesn't engage in public. She doesn't allow comments on her videos. Absolutely no. Even when she's giving speeches, it's all straight from notes. Absolutely nothing.
Of course. Dude, she can't. She literally just said that she won't put up with its threats. Of course, someone that considers any kind of dissent or comment not sucking their dick to be offensive,
TJ,
and they
we
won't
receive
put up with that kind of bullshit. And if you're going to go along with that line of reasoning, then don't be surprised when people call you out on their own, because they don't have the opportunity to do it on your videos. They don't even have the chance to upvote it or downvote it or anything, because how shitty you sound to most people, and that you can get called out. And so you silence the opposition one way or another. And even on a smaller scale, that shit can be detrimental to a channel.
Right. And to say, as far as the death threats goes, I'm not in any way supporting anybody threatening, Anita's life or anything like that.
Yeah, of course not.
Fuck you, I'm going to kill you for saying that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm passionate. I'm sorry, I got loud and a bit passionate there, but I've watched her I've watched her since she started the Feminist Frequency, and when she started it's because she got no traction talking about TV shows and talking about other media. But then she found something where she would get some opposition, where she would get some backlash because of how she was going about it. And so she took off from that. She used the immediate reaction she got to boost it more, and she's been going on that since, saying, well, look at the immediate reaction I got, how sexist it was, how misogynistic it was, how horrible it was, how violent the people were, and she's been using that ever since to keep going on more and more as being a professional victim, in my opinion.
No, but seriously, she really does go out of her way.
She does, yeah.
To show it. It's that same victim card shit as like someone told me I was ugly, therefore they're attacking me on the internet and I'm a victim. Like that, you put yourself out there, you put your face on the internet and shit's gonna happen. You put a picture of your baby on there, all right, and it could go viral. And a lot of people could be like, oh, that's an ugly baby.
Yeah.
Get used to it. That's what posting your shit online entails. It entails criticism. If you don't want the criticism, fine. She is totally allowed to have her opinion, but then she goes and silences those that have an opposing opinion and calls herself a victim when they tries to express that opinion. Fuck that shit.
Got it?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I just want to pick up on something that Dark Matter said. So I'm actually a supporter of...
You mean non-stamp collector? Is it non-stamp?
Right.
Yeah, you don't want to conflate the two. Dark Matter
you gotta watch
is
the bald head
stupid
guy.
animation. A non-stamp collector is the actual person in the white shirt with red sleeves.
Whatever, fine.
Sorry for the correction.
So I agree that the content analytic approach. So just to kind of give a bit of a background. So in my own work, I argue that if you want to study aspects of human nature, you could study what I call fossils of the human mind. It actually perfectly plays into the discussion of Anita Sarkeesian. But I think you'll see that one of us, between Anita and myself, if I may say, is a scientist. The other one is a charlatan, and I'll let you decide who's who. So here it goes. So I argue that there are things called fossils of the human mind, right? The brain doesn't fossilize, right? If you're a paleontologist, you could go and study skeletal remains or fossil remains to study the evolutionary history of a species. But if you want to study the evolution of the human mind, the mind doesn't fossilize. But what does fossilize are the cultural products that human minds have left behind. So I could study Greek tragedies written 3,000 years ago and demonstrate that there are certain universal themes in those Greek tragedies that move us in exactly the same way today. In other words, I could put myself in the mind of the Greek author 3,000 years ago and completely understand when he's talking about sibling rivalry and status seeking and paternity uncertainty. And I use the techniques of content analysis, analyzing the contents of texts and other cultural products to conduct a formal scientific analysis. So I'm completely with you that there is something very valuable about applying that methodology. But the difference between Anita Sarkeesian and someone like me, not that in any way I wish to compare myself to her, is that I actually adhere to the scientific method, meaning that there's a very clear set of data that would support my hypothesis or falsify my hypothesis. The very little that I've seen of that charlatan, basically any single pattern could be construed as supportive of her narrative. So if the guy treats the woman very nicely in the video, then it is a manifestation of benevolent sexism, right? Because you're treating the woman very nicely, you're being chivalrous to her, you're being kind to her, and that's another type of sexism. It's not hostile sexism, it's benevolent sexism. So in other words, she's pretending, she's hiding under the cloak of legitimacy, but she is a buffoon of the highest order. So forget about her victimology. I couldn't have offered a more devastating scientific attack of that charlatan. She's the Reza Aslan of content analyses.
Bam.
The Godfather has spoken.
I mean, I've spoken. I dropped the mic now. I'm done.
All right.
Damn.